Hey friends, coming on here to have a little chatteroo with you today before I get ready to head over to a pretty exciting mission for the next couple of weeks. I'm not ready to share with you what this mission is. If you've been coming to a lot of things that I've been hosting, workshops and, little things here and there, you may have some idea of what it is that I'm up to, but I'm so excited. I feel like I've been in a really big transition season and a lot of things have changed and shifted in my life. I'm just on like 12 different side quests right now. And so part of what is exciting for me is all these little secret projects that I'm doing, these things that I'm learning, these mentors that I'm working with, and they have nothing to do with work and they have nothing to do with my business and they have nothing to do with entrepreneurship. It's just fulfilling a little creative itch that I have in different parts of my expression and different parts of my embodiment. Now, with that said, if you've been listening to the podcast for, I don't know, for the last 4 years or wherever it is that you hopped onto this conversation, I always tell you, I'm not one to integrate with you in real time. I'm somebody who likes to just experience things and then come to a summary with it after I've been able to have an integration by myself. I find that it's my process. I don't really like a lot of noise or, even just speaking, even though I'm speaking into a microphone like by myself in my own home, there is still this perception like, oh, other people are going to hear me, other people are going to listen to me. So sometimes there's this desire to intellectualize the experience that you're presently having. But for me, I feel like I don't want to intellectualize it. I want to experience it. I want to be in it. I want to have presence in it. And I don't want to be soiled. I don't want my experience to be soiled by thinking too much of it. So with my point in saying all of that is I will not be reflecting with you right now, but maybe, you'll catch me in a few weeks or a few months or maybe even a few years. Who knows what the timeline is where I'll let you know what it is that I'm up to. But with all of that said, I also want to let you know that this year, 2024, is the last time to study Breathwork Facilitator training with me in a virtual manner. So if you are a listener who's been thinking about studying breathwork from wisdom traditions, where you want to facilitate healing arts to your community, whether as a coach, a healer, a wellness practitioner, a therapist, a nurse, a doula, a professor, a teacher, an educator, it doesn't matter what title you have in the healing arts or however it is that you refer to yourself. If you're somebody who's been wanting to learn breathwork in the form and in the manner where I teach, which is from a very, very specific wisdom traditional angle. I teach from the physiology, the science, the history, the energy sciences, the chakra systems, the emotions, the elements, all of these beautiful masculine and feminine energy that is all about healing. If that is something that's been calling to you, I'm letting you know that this is the last virtual training that I'm hosting that is starting in November. Now, this is not a threat to you and be like, I'm just saying I literally am looking at my calendar and my time and I am just not finding the time or actually the excitement to hold a training of this caliber and of this depth and length in my schedule. 12 weeks of a training is pretty intense. It's it's a lot of energy to hold space for inspiring practitioners, people who are coming, they're wanting to learn, they're receiving mentorship, they're healing, they're crying, they're changing, they're embodying, they're growing, they're doing all of this kind of stuff. And me as a mentor and me as somebody who's holding the space for, 30, 40 people at a time, it is an intense amount of energy to hold. And when I think about what it is that I want to hold space for, I always think about what is it that I'm excited to hold space for. And as this season is coming to a natural, it's not a close and it's not an ending, but it's kind of just this natural ebb and flow. You know what I mean? I teach flow breathwork. So part of what I try to embody myself is that there's seasons of really deep excitement about certain things. And there's seasons of not as excitement about the same thing, and it's not like, oh, you'll never do this or you'll never hold this or you'll never carry it again. Is that it's going to reemerge in a different face, with a different, energy, with a different vibe, with a different sense of itself, or like a newness in the next season. Now, I am not feeling excited about what that next season looks like for training facilitators. I am so excited to lead more breathwork sessions. I'm excited to mentor people in perfectionism and people pleasing. I'm excited to facilitate breathwork more than I am in training facilitators in the upcoming year or so. So I don't know if at the end of 2025, I'll be like, okay, virtual trainings are open again. Or in 2026, I'll be like, hey, virtual trainings are open again. But just for what I know from the foreseeable future, and I'm recording this at the end of October, for the foreseeable future, for at least the next 12 months, I do not have it in my desire or capacity to run another virtual training, except the one that is starting in November for 12 weeks. So having said all of that, which is like, girl, why are you telling me? I don't know you, right? But I am talking to the folks who have been longtime listeners. And if you have been called to study with me any kind of way, I am encouraging you to get in on this. Because one thing I know for sure is that as soon as I am not offering a thing, like 500 people, well, not 500 people, but a handful of people will be emailing me and DMing me like, hey, when's your next one? When's your next training? I hope I can join the next one. And unfortunately for you, I really don't have one in the foreseeable future. And I want to feel excited about what it is that I'm doing and what it is that I'm holding space for. And that has always been true. And if you've kind of followed my journey in the healing arts, or, the projects that I take on, and I have like this side quest and this other side quest and this other side quest, you know what I mean? I'm always very excited about those things. It does not feel like a distraction to me. It does not feel like I'm abandoning one thing to do another, or I'm like too scatterbrained or too undecided. I never really feel that way because my actions are really driven by my pleasure and excitement and joy for those things. So I'm truly excited to, pursue the projects that I do, or pursue the, containers that I host, or the masterminds and the mentorships that I hold space for. And in this season, I'm just in a different energy. And this year has been quite challenging for me, to be honest, emotionally. And there's just been a lot of grief and a lot of changes, and just, a very big transformation that took place over the course of a long time. And so I just feel like I've been holding this energy for myself to transform and to expand and to grow. And in that process, there's all of these realizations that come up as well. And so, sometimes you got to mentor yourself. It's like, what would you be telling your mentees? What would you be telling, other people who are going through a similar thing? And I think that's the beautiful thing, that me and you and all of us, we're just a big reflection of each other, and I'm always so transparent with you. Like, I don't have all the answers. I'm literally just like speaking into a microphone, and I hope that, something that I say resonates with you, or you can relate to something, or you feel seen in a certain way, while I'm also educating you about things that I've picked up along the way, right? Like things that I study and things that I take away from my educators and teachers and mentors and, masters that I train with, and all these different things. It's like, yeah, there's education as part of this podcast and the conversations we have. And also it's about allowing yourself to meet yourself in the season that you are in. And I'm not going to say that it's not, like I'm trying to find the word, because it's not a scary decision for me, to say like, oh, I'm not going to, run virtual trainings next year. I'm going to run other things that are virtual. There's, mentorships and masterminds, and you're welcome to come into healing containers and breathwork club. And there's so many different things, but I also think that it's important to not get stuck on something that works, but isn't in your full energy of doing. And it is a shift. It is a considerable shift. When you think about 2020, there's so many of us that came into the online space that were not really, online business owners. For example, myself, when I say that I've been in my work for about a decade now, all of that was not online. I only came online in 2020. as a side effect of having to come online to continue and pursue, what it is that I was already doing in person. And so it's not a negative thing, it's not a bad thing, but it's also worthwhile to say, is that the format and is this the pathway that I would have chosen if I didn't have to make this decision from a business perspective or from a survival perspective even, right? And so a decade ago, I was not interested to do work online. I was not I know how to do work online. And I'm also very savvy on the internet, but I literally just figured out how to, market and promote myself and do all of these different things and position myself online only 4 years ago, so that hasn't, and you watch the whole process, you watch the whole progress. And I think it's important to, be realistic about it too. It's not to say like, oh my gosh, I had all this help and all these people and No, like I literally was like, oh, I cannot teach at the studios that I usually teach at. So like, let me figure out how to build a virtual space, So here's like Breathwork Club in real life, in virtual spaces. And now it opens up the world and it opens up the possibility to so many different people to be able to receive my gifts and receive my information and receive my, facilitation and come into community and do all of these different things. There's so much beautiful value in it. But then if I step back and I say, if I was given the choice to do stuff online versus not do stuff online, there's a very clear answer for me. Like there's a part of me that feels like totally embodied in certain things that I do when I'm online. And there's certain parts of me that feels totally just fully in my fucking purpose when I'm in person. Okay. And I've had the opportunity to feel both of these things. So I'm not a person who's like, oh, brand new and I've only done things online or only done things in person. I've been able to do, a variety of different things. And it's just like a very clear answer. There's no question about what I prefer. And so in that sense, it is a additional energetic task to continue training facilitators virtually, even though I think it's really beautiful that we can have a virtual platform. We can connect around the world and you can study at your own pace. And you have all these modules that I've spent all of these years, perfecting and recording. And I'm going to take back the word perfecting. I mean, refining and recording. And there's so much labor and love that went into these things. But then to maintain that going forward doesn't seem like an exciting prospect for me. So I'm not ready to say like burn everything down and like nothing ever works, because I think those are also dramatic statements and like those are statements out of like frustration. And the whole reason I'm having this reflection out loud is I think it's really valuable to hear somebody's thought process, and maybe you don't resonate with like the exact thing that I'm talking about, but I think it is important to hear somebody's thought process of what makes somebody successful and how they navigate success. And I say that about myself because I haven't been shy about saying that I am successful in many different ways, not just monetarily, not just by the accolades that I have, not just by achievements, not just by a best-selling book and a top podcast and but like those things are measures of success. But I am very, very clear about the reason that I personally believe that I have success in my life, aside from many, access to resource and education and support and mentorship. Like aside from all of those things, if I think about success from an internally generated energy, is that I always give more of a shit about myself than I believe anybody could about me. I always believe that. Like if you love me to the end of the world, I love myself to the end of 7 worlds. Like if somebody else like thinks I'm the shit or I'm great in this way, I already think that about me. And that seems arrogant and that seems like, oh shit, you're full of yourself. You know what I mean? But so what? Right? That gives me the permission and the ability to make really dramatic and drastic decisions for myself. And part of why I believe that I will be successful in literally anything that I put my desire to, not my mind to, my desire to, I will be able to have that. And I'm not saying like overnight, and I'm not saying in 2 months. months. I'm not saying, by the snap of my finger. I'm not like caught up in a time frame of like how fast that success happens or fast that thing, comes to fruition. I'm not caught up on that. But I do believe that having passion and having a desire and really enjoying and giving a shit about things will always allow you to make aligned decisions for you. And I do think that that is so important with many of the clients that I work with who are perfectionists and people pleasers and struggle with imposter syndrome, or people who navigate, being able to make decisions for themselves. They're always, not always, but there's always this energy of, am I doing the right thing? Or am I making the right choice? Or am I giving myself the right opportunities? Like, what if I'm not, smart enough to make the decision? What if? And part of that energy is being so in love with yourself that it doesn't matter if this is the right or wrong decision. It's the belief that you'll be able to figure it out, even if like 2 weeks later you decide like, oh shit, that was the wrong decision, or like I shouldn't have made the decision. It's not about making right or wrong decision. It's about feeling aligned with the decisions that you're making and trusting yourself that the decisions that you're making, even though they feel in firsthand, like right in front of you, it feels like destruction, or it feels like a stupid thing to do, or it feels like a negative choice or negative, action or negative decision. There's something beyond that. There's something greater beyond that. And again, like I'm reflecting out loud with you because I really love when I can hear the thought process of somebody whose success I value, okay? And I'm saying it this way because, again, I said, I'm always talking to you about the fact that I actually am successful in many ways that I actually like, So it's not success in any like one specific way, like, oh, I made this much money, so that makes me successful. Many times when I've made money, I'm like, oh, but like I'm not successful because like my relationships are not great, or my friendships are, are over here, my social life. So I don't feel successful in that way. I feel the most successful when I'm holistic, when I feel that things are in balance and I'm not like overdoing one thing or the other, and I'm not in a chase for something. Anytime I feel like I'm in a chase for it, I feel desperate. I feel like there's this like part of me that doesn't believe that I'm not good enough, but it's acting like I'm not good enough, and I'm trying to prove that I am, and it's very subconscious. And so when I'm desperate for a thing, I always like want to revisit that. And I really want to step back and say, hey, why is this happening? How is this happening? What is, what is the wound that is showing up for me? And I love when I hear other people who I also deem successful in that way, reflecting out loud too, because it lets me see how they navigate their, I don't know, it's not insecurities, it's not, flaws, it's just how they navigate their thought process. You know what I mean? And I love, okay, like if you ever listen to any episodes on the podcast, I'm talking about psychology, you know what I mean? I love how the mind works, and I love how different people have different perspectives and they come to different conclusions. And even if you're right or wrong, or I agree with you or see eye to eye in your thought process, like I'm not saying I agree with you, but there are certain ways that people think that are just so fascinating to me. And when I'm thinking of, and when I hear somebody thinking out loud, and I'm like, oh wow, I never really considered that perspective, or that's reminding me of a perspective that I used to know last year but I don't know anymore. So that's just reminding me to come back to this energy or this thought process or this way of thinking. It really just it really gives me the opportunity to open my horizons and my mind in the way that I can approach things that I'm going through and dealing with in my life as well, And so I'm going to just crack my back, so you might hear it on the microphone. But basically, the way that I'd love to continue this conversation is perhaps you're also somebody who's experiencing transitions in your life, and perhaps what you've been doing is either clenching on or wanting it to work because you spent time and energy in wanting it to, pan out or do a certain thing, or perhaps like it just feels like you're starting back at square one, like you're starting a new thing and it's like square one energy. And why do a new thing when you can just keep doing the thing that you were already building a mastery in, And that is true too. Like it's worthwhile considering. But if I'm going to just talk about myself, because hello, I'm just, self-reflecting here. I think about the things that I've built in the course of a decade, and the form and the format of many of the things that I've built have changed its face many times. And I've just been very clear about it. Like, if I don't want to do it, then I'm not going to hold it. If I can't like really hold the energy for this, for the people that I serve and the people who come for mentorship, who are so committed to change, who are committed to growth and progress, who are committed to the healing arts, who want to do this work, like, what would it be like if I just didn't give a shit about them, coming and spending their time, their money, their energy, their efforts with me? And like, of course, I don't want to, like go through that transaction, that energetic transaction, that financial transaction, of course not. So there's many different versions of things that make sense for me personally in different times of my life and different seasons of my life and different energies of my life. And something that I've repetitively talked about in the last 4 years is how the format of my work in the healing arts as a breathwork facilitator, as a mentor for healers, as a trainer of breathwork facilitators and sound healers, part of my format changes during what time of the year we're talking about, so there's certain seasons where I'm just so into one-on-one work, and certain seasons I'm like, yes, big group work, and certain seasons I'm not into doing healing work for other people. I'm very introspective. I'm very much about myself. I have like 1 or 2 clients on the calendar. Any more than that is just like overwhelming or too much energetically. And that's also energy management from my part. This season, I took a little gander at, like my own desires and energy. And I have probably the most number of one-on-one clients on my calendar than I have in my entire career. And I'm not feeling burnt out from it. You know what I mean? Like it's not by not choice and it's not by design, but it's to say, yeah, I actually do have capacity to take on one more. I do have capacity to take on one more. So in that sense, like I will be enrolling more people. And for another season, it's like, yep, I'm taking 2 clients and that is it. Like my time and attention goes to these 2 people. And like I can't manage or handle more than that because there's other things that I'm doing or other projects, or I just don't have the energy capacity to hold that space for that many people. So I say this to you in terms of, yeah, again, like I am reflecting out loud, but perhaps this resonates with you in the way that you're doing your work too. There might be something that you're doing that's changing its face or changing its format, and that's totally okay, right? And we get so attached, right? Like this is like, oh, I built this for 4 years, or I built this for 10 years, or I built this for fill in the blank, like whatever months of years. Sometimes it's not even that long. You're like 2 months and like, what if I want to do something different? It's like, okay, then do it, but really investigate from an internal place. Like, are you just changing stuff up because, you're like literally bored and like you need a different, you need to fuck something up that doesn't need to get fucked up, but you're like literally just bored. Sometimes that is the case. And when I reflect upon my stuff, it's like, that's not the case. I am really at the end of holding space for training breathwork facilitators virtually 2024 and 2025. I am just not seeing it in the future past 2025. I just can't see it beyond that, so through this entire next year, I don't have any virtual certification programs coming up. There might be, a sound healing certification. I might run that again, but I haven't run something like that in 3 years either. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, I didn't want to teach sound healers virtually. I was teaching them in person, or I was running workshops, or this thing or that thing. But I say all of this to say that it's okay if things change form, and it's okay if things change its face and it looks a little bit different. And it's not always about like burning stuff down and, and like taking it off your plate, that can also be liberating too, because, sometimes it's like things have run its course and things have, seen its end. That is totally okay. Things do have an expiration date, especially when it is like a very creatively, energetically driven situation. There is like creative energy that is the fire, the fuel. And if that fire, the fuel is gone, then it's like, okay, like do something different. Absolutely, that happens too. But my point for this particular conversation is that sometimes it's not about like running out of fuel forever. It's just to say it's just going on the back seat now because there's other more exciting or more more exciting and more pleasurable activities that are on the horizon. And you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that. And sometimes we're just like trying to force things that are dead to come back alive, and sometimes things are just like on their way out. We're trying to like desperately keep it alive or desperately trying to make it work, and I think it's worth the effort, but desperation never really pans out the way that what am I saying? It's like desperation is just not cute. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to be doing things in desperation. We don't want to be doing things in a format that makes us feel like, okay, I'm just doing it because like I spent already too much time or money. In psychology or in business, it's known as sunk cost fallacy. And basically it's like you already spent, whatever it is that you spent. And I'm always talking about spending in terms of money, yes, but also your time. You spent your energy, you spent your attention, you spent your resources to do something. And because you spent something, the sunk cost fallacy basically says, let me double down on it because I already spent the $10. Okay, so let me spend another $20 to see if it's better. And because I already spent the $20, like I'm already in, so I might as well spend the next $50 in order to like see if it works out. And all of a sudden, you're out $500. And I'm making up these numbers, but it's kind of the sunk cost. Like you're just like pouring into something that like isn't giving you the return or isn't giving you the energetic return. Okay, and that's why it's important that it doesn't need to not always be a financial return. Perhaps you're doing okay financially getting the return, but perhaps it's the emotional return or the mental return or the physical, energetic, spiritual return that is kind of depleted in that interaction or that transaction. Okay. And that is so fair for you to think about, that if you are also not being fulfilled in your work, and in a capitalistic, colonized society, sometimes we don't really value that. It's like, oh, well, why do I have to be happy about my work? It's work. You know what I mean? Like, why? Like, that is such a, like privileged thing to think that you're going to be happy at the work that you do. It's work, right? Like, we do have that attitude and that mindset, but it's like, yeah, are you ready to decolonize the work? You know what I mean? It's to say there should be some type of pleasure and enjoyment in the thing that you do. Your work is not this like full on punishment that is only to like feed the capitalistic system of you making money by trading your time and your life to get the money. Hopefully you do get to do something that gives you the money, but you also get to be in places that you enjoy being, so you get to teach, you get to learn, you get to take care of kids, or you get to take care of adults, or you are in the nursing home, or you're doing, like there's things that are not all just like an exchange of money. There is an exchange of money involved in that, but it's so much nicer when there's enjoyment to the thing too. It's one thing to go to work and just be like, I just do it for the clock in, clock out. And then we have just like a bunch of dead in the eyes people just walking around society. Like, you ever walk around New York or like near Wall Street, like dead in the eyes, like literal dead in the eyes. Like, oh my gosh, like I don't give a shit about your stocks and fucking bonds and all this. Like, what are you doing? Trading like made up money and made up problems and made up shit. And like, you really believe that you're important. Like, you really believe that you're so self-important doing this like fucking shit work. You know what I mean? And then you have people who are in spaces where they're taking care of children and they're taking care of special needs folks, and they're educating, they're teaching, they're supporting, they're doing all this arts and crafts and education, and there's so many different things and so many different places that people exist and belong to that are really from a place of passion, a place of community, and there's village mentality, there's friendship, there's honor of each other's skill sets and valuing each other in a certain way. And kumbaya fucking you know what I mean? Like there is like this kumbaya energy, and I don't know if I'm like fully all the way in that side of the spectrum, because there are certain things that I do enjoy about capitalism. You know what I mean? There's certain things that I do benefit from and privileged to experience and have the luxury to experience. I do, fuck with that. And also there's a balance, right? Like we are existing in a society that requires us to make money in certain ways. And it also is not the only way. You don't have to subscribe to a system that is like disconnecting you so much from, humanity, right? And there's like different things that are human. There's things that are pleasure and joy and excitement based and connection based that sometimes we fear experiencing those because we're so separated from that, and like talking to people, it's like, oh my gosh, this is giving me anxiety, or people being around in the same room. And then now there's like, there's all of this like separation. We are so quick to experience social anxiety and feel like othered and feel like our nervous system's always getting triggered if we're in places that we don't, belong in, when all of this is just made up, all of these different spaces that we exist in, all of these limitations that we put on ourselves, all of these, made up characteristics that we exist in are all made up, and part of it is when we're so attached to, the identity that we build of ourselves, including the projects that we have that help us build our identity, like here's the thing that helps me build my identity, or here's the project that helps me build a sense of self or sense of belonging. It becomes more difficult to move on from that. It's like this is a moment in time that helps you identify and define who it is that you are, but then also you are multidimensional. You're a human being existing in the world. You're a human being existing in the world, and you have so many different parts of you that want to manifest in different ways and in different contexts, right? And in different velocity. I'll leave this conversation. I'll try to wrap up this conversation by letting you know that one, the permission only comes from you at the end of the day. And even though it is easy to say, oh, my clients are making me do this, or my employees are making me do this, or my boss is making me do this, or my parents are at your big age, if you are like above 24, at your big fucking age, you get to make your decisions. You get to make your own decisions. You know what I mean? Including changing your mind, even if it feels difficult or challenging or confronting. I'm not saying like, oh, it's so easy, everybody can do it. I'm saying that it is difficult, but you are in the driver's seat. You have established control over your own life and agency over your own life. And to have agency of your life basically means that it's okay for you to step back when you want to, and it's okay for you to step down when you want to, or step to the side, or step in whichever direction you want to do the hokey pokey. You know what I mean? Like you can do that as long as it is in your hands to make the decisions for yourself. That is the agency. That is the personal power. That is you in your reclamation era. This is you in your, bad bitch era, however it is that you want to define it. A lot of people on the internet are calling it the villain era, or the dark goddess era, whatever. It's just basically like give a shit about enough about yourself to make decisions that feel difficult. Okay. And, and the more that you do that, the more that you practice that muscle, the decisions are actually not even going to feel difficult anymore. They're going to feel like obvious decisions. Like obviously, because you care about yourself, you're going to make that decision. Because I care about myself, I'm making that decision or this decision. And that has always been the case in my life. It's like, like it's not really that hard for me to choose because I care about myself to honor my needs and desires. Because one thing that I fully understand, and I briefly mentioned, this past year has been just a lot of grief. And actually, to be honest, it's been 3 years of grieving. And this is for many different reasons that I'm not really like wanting to integrate on this particular episode. But the grief is just this reminder, this remembrance of life is very fleeting. You're already older than you were when all of this shit started, 2020. You're already experiencing a different body than you had. You're already experiencing life with a different lens. People around you have aged. People around you have grown up. People around you are starting school or graduated or has their first big girl job and has, there's so many things that are fluctuating and changing simultaneously. And it is so weird to be a fucking human being, like trying to exist on a rock and also be attached to capitalism, and try to survive and like have food to eat and pay your bills and all this like weird human things that we do. It just constantly reminds me how fleeting life is. Like things will just never be the same as it is in this exact moment. Even if right now this moment is amazing, or there's many things wrong with it. I don't know the context of how it is that you're listening to it. There's many things that are wrong right now. And there's also many things that are just perfectly perfect. There are just so many things that are just imperfectly perfect, right? Like there's many things that are to be grateful for, to have gratitude for, to really enjoy, to appreciate, to, accept, and to really be present for. And I think that's an important thing that I practice remembering in many times where I've experienced frustration and anger and betrayal and grief and so many other things that like really lead to the fact that there's this, lingering sadness within me. And simultaneously, there's so many different things to enjoy. There's so many things to create. There's so many things to like and love and to experience. And just the virtue of being alive with the resources that we have and the capacity of life that we have the ability to live. And what I mean by that is not everybody has the resources that many of us do. Not everybody has the capacity to experience life in the way that we do, or the ability, or many different things, fill in the blank, right? Like there's so many things that are taken for granted for all of us. Like we take things for granted in so many different ways, and we don't really notice or recognize that until it's gone, or we don't notice it until a few years went by, and then we are in this nostalgic loop when we say, oh, remember back then, remember when it was so easy, and remember, like we had this like nostalgic idea, but like remember how it was when right now is the right now. The time is right now. And this is the time where you get to decide, how is it that I'm going to show up for myself that is in full respect and honor to me, even if it feels like some capitalistic ideology is making me feel like I'm behind, or I didn't do enough, or like this is a stupid decision for me to make in whatever context you're applying this conversation to. Okay, so all in all, if you want to come study breathwork with me, this is the last year to do it virtually until the foreseeable future. And we do start a container for 12 weeks in November. But there are other ways to work with me in the future as well. So if you're interested in masterminds and mentorship, if you want to check out my book, it's called Breathe. If you want to listen to the podcast, there's many ways to keep in touch and still, doing the healing arts work. The face of it's changing, but I'm not going anywhere. All right, friends. So just remember, the world is your playground. And until next time, I will catch you soon.